Hi everyone, I was going to send an email about this, but I decided to do a quick video just to sort of make it a little less confusing, because I think this might be confusing to some. Now, the reason that I'm sending this is essentially today I created some updates. So I did some pretty large updates to the emulator. Mainly I did the image caching, which I released a video for earlier, which somewhat talks about updating process, but more so about how the API works. And then now I did a large refactoring of the code. Refactoring means renaming, and so if we just quickly look into like this commit, we will see what has happened. It's just changed a heap of the function call names. So it was a bit inconsistent because of how the emulator was developed sort of quickly, but you can see here where I have this vbind drawing, it's now called vDrawBind thread. And it's just more consistent that everything's named properly. This was especially apparent in the TUM event where there was just no prefixes used at all. So now, sort of in the old videos where I was talking about using x get mouse, this is no longer the naming, but just go to the documentation, all the naming's there. The example code's been updated, everything's been updated, so it uses the new naming, and it should be a lot more intuitive what everything's called. So why I wanted to make this video really quickly is because now I've created two large update commits. This is very similar to when the last video I talked about the font updates, how you cherry pick the commits. But the reason with these two large commits, essentially now we're getting to the point, or we're at the point where I want to sort of recommend for the students that haven't actually forked the emulator yet, or who have forked it but haven't actually written code in the emulator, like they haven't done any of their own stuff yet, you can just delete your fork and refork and you'll be up to date, right? Because there shouldn't be really any more big updates coming throughout semester. The emulators should probably be ready to go now. Like better performance, and the API and the documentation is pretty complete and good for you to use. But for the students who have started writing, I just want to quickly talk about how you would update, and specifically as there's now two commits. So I just want to make sure that you do this properly, because we need to apply the commits essentially in the same order they were made. Otherwise you might end up with problems. And this means that you should apply this commit and then this commit. Now, I've split up my commits the same as I did with the fonts one, where I have one commit that sort of updates the main and the demo code, and then one commit that updates the background, like libraries. And so there should be labeled essentially, this one you'll see here, the main, and this one's also main. This commit here and this commit here do the backend stuff. So you can merge, cherry pick the main ones, but you might run into merge conflicts. This guy here is the same as in the image caching video, where it's just sort of updated the main to show how you use the new loaded images API calls. So it's really quite a small commit. But this guy here is a bit larger, and it's just renaming essentially all of the existing function calls to use the new names. So if you merge this, you might get a conflict. Like when you do a cherry pick, you could get merge conflicts. If you do that, you can actually cancel the cherry pick. So if we look at the manual for cherry pick, you can see here that you have abort, and if you go down, it will just cancels and returns the state before the cherry pick. So essentially just goes back to wherever you were. If you're not happy with the merge and you don't know how to do it manually, just go git cherry pick abort, right? And that will take you back to before you did it. And then you can maybe just go and do them manually if the merging is being a bit too complicated for yourself. But I think you should be able to handle it. But I actually have no idea what would happen if you've drastically changed your main and you try and cherry pick this, or if you use your clean as the template, then you've got the problem that this commit's quite different. I did add commits to clean, but I don't think I essentially this point here, I deleted the old clean branch, I created a new branch after I'd done the refactoring, and then I essentially just updated and pasted the minimal C in again. So this guy here should do the refactoring for if you use clean as your template. But the easiest way is just to go through and manually change the function calls. If you try and build it, it will throw errors to everything that needs to be renamed. And if you look inside this commit, you'll see this commit here, you'll see the new names quite simply. Like it'll say, can't find vdraw update screen, and you can quite simply see that you should just change it to TUM draw update screen. But what I want to say just essentially is, to really boil it down, what you need to do if you've started working on it, you need to apply this commit and then you apply this commit. And so to do that, you would go into your, we'll go, not to web browser, but we'll go into our emulator, and you want to cherry pick this guy first. So this guy A45C, refactored, yes, and we'll click the little clipboard and then you can paste him in. That's what you would run first. I'm not going to do it. And then git cherry pick, and then you would run this, you want this commit, so you click the clipboard again for DBE8. You see DBE8, and you would run that again, right? And that should integrate all the new updates for you into your repository, and then you can push and continue, and it should hopefully not be any more changes to come. So hopefully this is not too confusing for anyone. Again, if you haven't really started working on the emulator yet, if you haven't forked it, or you forked it but you haven't done anything, just delete it. If you go into settings in your repository, there'll be at the bottom an option to delete it. We click this and type in the name, and then you're all good to go. So hopefully this helps anyone. Hopefully this is the last of the changes. Again, if you're not sure about how to do this, or you're having problems doing it, please reach out to Philip or myself. We'll be happy to help you, as I am responsible for these updates. But now the emulator should be good to go with a few nice updates and more consistent documentation, which will help you all. So thank you very much. If you watch this, I'm going to send an email out now telling you to watch this. So hopefully you watch this.